Hello, Hockey World. It is Monday, May 12th. I'm Julie Rovenheimer.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Josh Rimmer.
And I am Eklund, and you're listening to and watching the Hockey Buzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com, Monday morning edition. We got a lot to talk about. And my goodness, behind us, we're playing the Buffalo. We're just beginning the Boston Bruins Montreal Canadiens game. I didn't get much sleep this weekend, guys. I'll explain that later. Boston, Montreal, which is now underway. Danny Beer's in the lineup, just cuz.
Shocking.
Yes. In that game, yet to know what happens there. But you know what? Let's start first and foremost, Julie, with the Penguins Rangers series, and what has turned into quite a story from what was kind of a boring series for the first 4 games.
Well, yeah, I guess I wouldn't say that it was boring. It was just kind of uninspired and at times.
I'll say it was boring. But you can
okay.
Go ahead.
I'm going with uninspired and at times a little lopsided. But last night, we were talking about it at the NHL studios. Of course, there's lots of Ranger fans that are in the control room, and we were just talking about how the team has really rallied around Martin St. Louis and the passing of his mother, and how now not only are they playing for themselves and they're playing for the Stanley Cup but they're really playing for each other, and you see that in them, and they've just got a lot more passion and commitment and dedication to the team, and they're playing more and more like a team, which is why I thought it was very interesting and very poignant when Martin St. Louis passed off the Broadway hat to the team, because it really was a team effort and really amazing to see. And we were talking about how maybe this situation with his mother really was a catalyst for this team, and should they go on to win the Cup, it is without question in my mind a turning point in their postseason, because they really were just kind of hanging on and playing good enough to win, but not necessarily great. And now they are really putting their foot down and making it happen. And they're not satisfied. They don't want just a 1-goal lead. They want 2. They want 3. They want 4. They're constantly pushing the puck, and that's something we didn't see from them last round against Philadelphia. So it will be interesting to see what happens in Game 7, especially since it's in Pittsburgh, and if this team can do it once more and get to the 3rd round. So we'll see. Yeah,
I'm quite often when teams win championships, something crazy happens like this, and it's not to this extreme, but you've seen it before where there's some kind of point in the season or something weird happens where a coach gets fired, or which is another one that we can see. Or I remember, I think it was Dallas Green passing away in Philadelphia when the Phillies went on to win the World Series. Just things like that, it just completely, everybody sort of kind of rallies. And remember what happened here. I mean, Ryan Callahan, was traded from Marty St. Louis, and he was the captain of this team and really respected and loved by his teammates. There was definitely St. Louis is coming in now as Callahan's replacement, and he demanded a trade, and there was a lot of weird, do we respect this guy for doing this or what? And there was all this kind of stuff going on, which is definitely not there now. And Marty, that for whatever it's worth, Marty has definitely come on and actually, he's played better. He's playing with passion. And the Rangers, who haven't really been a really good team unit in a long time, I will say, this team has always been torn apart. Whenever it started to get chemistry, they would tear it apart, right, Mike? That's what's been going on.
Yeah, there's been a lot of transition over the years with the Glenn Sather at the helm in New York. The one thing I'm impressed by with the Rangers over the last couple games, in spite of the fact that guys like Stepan and Rick Nash still have not been scoring, you're getting more offense from a guy like Derek Brassard, who had 3 points in Game 5 on Friday and scored the insurance goal on Sunday. They're getting that production on top of guys like Hagelin, and Marty gets the goal in the first period, and you could just feel the emotion at MSG. The crowd was really loud, really into the game. They got up 2-0, and it was a wild scene. And throughout the game there was a lot of emotion. I mean, even when Pittsburgh got that goal late in the first period, there was a lot of emotion and on the ice. And Josh will go into the Sidney Crosby thing, but Crosby was getting physically involved with a few things, and I think this just leads to I don't think it'll be a wild offensive Game 7, but I think a very physical, very emotional Game 7 between two teams, one that has sort of fallen back after being ahead 3-1, and another one that's filled with emotion because of St. Louis' personal tragedy.
Yeah.
And it's a question of who's going to come out on top. I can't wait to watch Game 7 tomorrow.
Josh, go ahead.
Yeah, guys, watching the game last night, the thought going through my head is, wow, I mean, they're finally doing what the Blue Jackets did in the first round, getting the Penguins, on their heels and testing Fleury and making Fleury question himself a little bit. Rick Nash, like Mike said, still non-existent. Derek Brassard, huge game last night. Ryan McDonough, I thought, looked pretty good as well, and he's been battling that injury. The interesting thing I see here, Eck, though, is if the Rangers do defeat the Pittsburgh Penguins in Game 7, could Dan Bylsma be out of a job? And you got to think those opening coaching positions, possibly would go and grab him. He'd probably move to the front of the list, wouldn't he?
Yeah, I would say. I mean, and I think he will be. And in a way, I mean, the Penguins have really shown just this unbelievable inconsistency. I mean, in this playoffs, at times, I mean, they look like world beaters. At times, they haven't been able to do anything. We had a big fight here going on in the Montreal Bruins game, by the way. It looks like someone just nailed Price. Anyway, this is 1-0 behind. If you're keeping track, Montreal's up 1-0 after one. But yeah, you know what I'm talking. I mean, the consistency of the Penguins has just not been there at all, and not just not been there, but not been there to the point where they are really bad when they're bad. I mean, they're really bad when they're bad. They're not just levels of good. They are either good or terrible. And I don't get that. I don't get why that team, plays at that level, Jules. I mean, this is a team that should have veterans on it. They shouldn't be doing that.
That's 100%. But the real problem here is that you have these great players who are used to being great players, and when they are unable to play the way that they know how to play, it's incredibly frustrating for them. And it's a problem when you can really, I don't want to say you can only play one way, but if scoring is your game and you can't score, you need to find other ways to contribute. Sidney Crosby is often noted as being very good at that. When he was in that scoring slump of his and he was still looking for that first goal, everybody was pointing out the other ways he was contributing, whether it was being physical or drawing, defenders to his corner of the ice and opening up free space for other people, or, whatever it was. They were always pointing out these little things. The problem's been in the past two games, they've not been able to point those things out for anybody on the Penguins team.
You're dead
they
on.
are just in a supreme funk, and it's kind of like it's our way or the highway, and right now they're hitting the highway, and it's taking them back to Pittsburgh for a Game 7. So it's one of those things where they need to be able to adapt and adjust on the fly, because at this point, this is going to be now the third game that the Rangers are going to be coming at them with everything they've got. If they can't figure it out today in the off day, they are going to be packing their bags, because the Rangers are going to win Game 7 unless the Penguins are able to adjust and respond in an appropriate way.
I couldn't agree more, and I can't help but think about the Olympics to a degree, and because the NHL is such a emotional roller coaster up and down. I mean, you think of the way Crosby is, for example. I mean, he's been already, when you go to the Olympics, it's like going to the playoffs in the middle of the season, and then you slip out of that mode back into this mode, back into actually a regular season mode that was way down because the Penguins were already they didn't have to play for anything. So
Right.
Crosby comes back into that, and he hasn't been able to shift that gear back up to me. As many Penguins haven't been able to do, I think. I mean, I really think that's.
Now, see, I disagree. See, you're putting this on Crosby, and I'm putting it on the Rangers. The Rangers are the ones that are making him ineffective. Sure, Crosby has a piece to do with it, but in my mind, it's not necessarily a lack of a lack of effort, we'll say, on Crosby's part. at this point you're seeing more and more frustration, but the effort is still there. He's still trying. He's still going after that. He's still going into, open spaces and trying to find those opportunities. But the Rangers are going so fast on the offensive zone. I mean, we saw last night how many breakaway opportunities or odd man rushes did we have because the Rangers are finally utilizing their speed. A lot of that has to do with the addition of Chris Kreider into the lineup, giving them another weapon in addition to Carl Hagelin, who's usually been their go-to guy on the breakaways and streaking down the wing. But now you've got that other threat with Chris Kreider, and they're being incredibly effective with it. So as far as, even in watching the highlight last night, I felt like I was watching the New York Rangers show. Yeah. Because we really only had we had 2 highlights out of, I think we had 10 highlight clips, and only 2 of them were for the were for the Penguins. One was a goal, and one was a save that Fleury made that really shouldn't have been highlight worthy, but he did a little pinwheel thing, so it looked a lot fancier than it actually was. Right. But other than that, it was all Rangers all the time, the entire game.
You're
so
right
to
on.
say that this is a lack of effort on Pittsburgh, I would disagree. I just think the Penguins or the Rangers. Why do I keep mixing them up? I just think the Rangers are just going after it. They are playing passionate, inspired hockey, and it's really fun to watch.
Well, see, that's what you're saying. I'm not disagreeing with you, and I'm really not saying the Penguins aren't putting out effort. What I really think is happening here is hockey's such an emotional sport, as we know, and the playoffs are all about emotion at times. And we've seen things like the Miracle on Ice happen, where an emotional team can beat a team that's way better than them. That's not the Rangers and Penguins. It's not that kind of situation, of course, but there is a team playing with incredible amounts of emotion and a team playing without much emotion. And at the end of the day, the team with the incredible amount of emotion, Josh, is going to win. They're just going to win in the NHL, no matter who they are against anyone else.
Yeah, and Marty St. Louis looks like he's possessed out there. The guy is flying. Yeah. Flying. He's very noticeable on the ice. You see him how fast he's out there, and there's a lot of momentum right now in the New York Rangers corner. I think it's very possible we could see the Penguins eliminated tomorrow night.
It's so hard to say because there was a lot of momentum on the Blue Jackets corner as well going back to Game 7, and the Penguins just hit that switch, Mike, and turned it on.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, over the last 2 games, you can't really make Marc-Andre Fleury the scapegoat for either one of the losses. It's been a team loss. I agree with Julie's point in the fact that Pittsburgh has sort of been a flatline, baseline, just going along at an even keel, and if that performance is good enough to win, they win. But the Rangers have stepped it up emotionally, rallying behind Marty St. Louis, the desperation of, it's either we win or we're done, and now they've carried it to a Game 7, and I think it's a 50-50 proposition on Tuesday. It could be, this is the game that Fleury and he breaks the this problem that he's had for a number of years of being the clutch goaltender. If he comes up big in Game 7 at Consol Energy Center, then he maybe shakes the demons away. But if the Rangers win, then like Josh said, Biosmo might be gone, and you could see a reorganization of the Penguins going forward this summer.
Yeah. And the funny thing, too, guys, is the first round between the Penguins and the Blue Jackets is whoever didn't score the first goal won the game, except for the final game. And this series, it's whoever scores the first goal wins the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I know. Speaking of which, and in Minnesota, Chicago, we saw that trend broken last night as well. Teams scoring the first goal won every game in that series. But last night, the Wild get a first goal by makes me want to holler. I like to call him. He's a heck of a player. That guy can fly. The Wild are a fast team, but he's a really fast player. The Wild, I asked the question yesterday on my blog, who believes the Wild can actually do this? I asked just a survey, and I was expecting, based on the Hockey Buzz readers knowing them pretty well, that maybe like 20% would say the Wild could actually do this at 2-2. It was almost 50-50, and that's saying something. That Wild have won over people, Mike. They've won them over.
Yeah, and based on the way that they played in Minnesota, I was really impressed with their performance. on Friday. They played great, evening the series. I think they dominated the Blackhawks in Game 4. Game 5, I mean, it was a tight game. They took the 1-0 lead. Chicago tied it up in the second period, and then Jonathan Toews, who to me right now is the best player in the NHL. I think he's better than Sidney Crosby. He's a clutch player. He's a two-way player. He plays physically when you need him to play it, and he scores key goals at the key times. And he just, he was in front of the net, picked up the rebound, and beat Brizgalov, who I don't think could be blamed for the loss. But I think Minnesota is probably, and they've won every home game so far. I think they're going to win Game 6, and I think this series is going 7, and I think we have the possibility of 4 Game 7s in the second round of the playoffs, which I think would be pretty cool.
That would go along with a lot of Game 7s in the first round. Julie, is Jonathan Toews the best player in the NHL right now?
I mean...
Come on, your answer...
How do you answer that question? He's obviously very good.
I have a tendency for hyperbole. What can I say?
But to say he's the best player, I mean, I don't even know. Well, here's my thought on that. We were talking about it last night. Brian Bickle leads the Chicago Blackhawks in goals this postseason.
Mm-hmm.
So... How are we judging this? Because we actually had this debate, because I was shocked that Bickle had the most goals. I was like, are you sure? Like, we checked it like 5 times because I couldn't believe it. And so, when you sit there and you say, well, okay, he's playing great, how do you quantify that? I mean, he doesn't even have the most points on his team. So... is he playing very well? Is he playing inspired hockey? Is he coming through in the clutch? Is he doing everything that you expect from him, especially as captain of the defending Stanley Cup champions? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I'm not sold on the fact that he's the best. Now, if you were to ask me who I think is the best, I don't even know that I have an answer for that either. We threw PK Subban into the mix simply because of the swagger and the, attitude and the passion that he brings to the lineup for Montreal. But this year's, Conn Smythe, hell, it could even go to John Gibson. Are you kidding me? So, there are so many players that you could put into, who's playing their best hockey right now in the postseason. Jonathan Toews being one of them, but to say that he is without question the highest on that list right now, I don't think so.
You know who I'm going to say is the best right now, Eck? I'm going to say Bruce Boudreau because of his gutsy move last game, putting John Gibson in between the pipes.
Was it really gutsy, though? I mean, wasn't it kind of obvious? I mean, honestly, I don't mean to be a jerk about that, but, I'm not a Boudreau fan.
No, I'm just kidding.
Sorry. Josh, go ahead.
No, I was just kidding. I called you a jerk. You said you don't mean to be a jerk, and I called you a jerk.
Yeah, well,
I was kidding.
I am a jerk in this case because I'm not a Boudreau fan, and in the playoffs especially, I've seen him fail in the playoffs before with other teams, and I don't think he's a good. This was not obvious. I mean, this was obvious to me. Sorry, this was obvious to me. Anderson is an okay goalie, but he's been up and down. He's not the kind of goalie who's going to win you a Stanley Cup. PK Subban just scored, Julie, on your cue back here.
See?
I know, so maybe he is the best player. Oh, that's not PK Subban, sorry.
Well, come on, Ack.
PK had a really good assist on this goal. I'm going to say that. This is Gallagher's second goal of the game. 2-0 Montreal, by the way. All right, so, to sit there, I don't know. To say you're not going to play Anderson, you're not going to play Hiller, because Hiller's been Mr. Rebound, and you got Gibson, who did nothing but just perform really well. Everybody knows what Gibson's about. They've been knowing for a long time. I mean, Julie, I couldn't help but think of this. This is funny when I was thinking of you, because I know you watched Gibson win some pretty big games for Team USA.
Oh, yeah.
And, and here you have two of the probably, not even arguably, I think the two goalies for Team USA for the next several Olympics, if they go to the Olympics, and Jonathan Quick and Gibson.
Yeah,
playing on the same ice at the same time. It must be cool for you.
Well, it is very cool, and when you think about them as goaltenders and how they approach the game, they are both very laid back and stress-free, and I have a fly in my house, and you know, it's just a game. We're going out and we're playing hockey. This is just a game, you know, and that is how they deflect pressure. And it's interesting to see because, you know, in UFA, John Gibson, at the World Juniors in UFA, John Gibson, John Gibson was the goaltender for Team USA, and John Gillies was the backup. And John Gillies learned a lot from John Gibson during that tournament, and you saw it this year in how Gillies approached the game.
Yes.
You know, he deflected all of the pressure. You know, it's not on me. It's, you know, whatever. So it was really interesting to see how other goalies are, I don't know if they are, but they're at least trying to adapt this carefree, it's just a game, it's not all on me kind of attitude. And but that's how he's successful. You know, when you talk to John, you know, and everyone's like, oh, he's just so nonchalant. And he put together a freaking shutout in his NHL playoff debut. And, you know, the fans were like, I think I'm more excited about this than he is. And that's kind of the point. You know, he shouldn't be excited about this. You know, this is his job. And I'm sure he's happy. It's not like he's, you know, unhappy about it. But that's just his demeanor. This is just a game. And, you know, I've worked at being the best to be prepared for this situation. So yes, I should be having this much success. And it's really just about perspective and how you look at the game. And he and Jonathan Quick look at the game in its simplest form. I block shots. That's what I do. And that is why they're successful. They don't, you know, put the weight of the world or the weight of their team or their fan base or whatever on their shoulders, because you will crumble. So they've learned how to deflect that. And that's why, you know, they say that the game is 10% physical and 90% between the ears. And there is no position that is more true than goaltending. And those two goalies have figured it out. And more importantly, they've been consistent with implementing it so that they are maintaining their level of success in high-pressure situations.
Yeah, and it's funny. I love goalies because being a goalie, I have a daughter who's a goalie, so I really get a real sense for goalies. And there are two kinds of goalies, in my opinion. There is this kind of goalie that we're talking about now, who's completely mellow. Like Steve Mason's like this too in Philly. Just completely doesn't, you know, nothing phases them. A goal's a goal. What goes behind me, I put behind me. I love that quote. It's like completely doesn't matter. And then you have the other goalies, like the Ryan Millers of the world, who are completely insane, like, and are strung tighter than, and their whole belief is that if they're not tightly strung, that Subban scored. If they're not tightly strung, then they think that something's wrong. My daughter's that kind of goalie. My daughter, if she goes on the way to a game and she says, if she's relaxed, she's like, Dad, I'm too relaxed, I'm going to lose. And she's like, if she's nervous, I'm like, you sure you want to play this position? You seem like in a wreck. And she's like, yeah, you know, this is what I have to do. I have to get. And I've seen both sides of it, and it works for two people. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, in history, you know, Glenn Hall, Hall of Fame goaltender, and he threw up before every game. You know, he was it was wound tighter than a clock. You know, but you do have goaltenders like Gibson.
Hiller's that way too. Hiller's wound tightly as well.
Yeah, James Reimer in Toronto, I think, is very woundly tight, and it shows in his play. But you know, the funny thing is that you know, Gibson is a ridiculously good prospect, and you know, he did something for the first time in 86 years since another Hall of Fame goaltender, Tiny Thompson, who in his first NHL game got a shutout, and in his first playoff game got a shutout.
When was that, in 1920?
1928, I believe it was.
Yeah, so, a whole lot different to do it back then, you know? I mean,
well, sure, but I mean, he's a prodigious talent.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's just, I mean, I think that, I don't think it was really, I think it did take a little bit of guts on the part of Boudreau to go away from the veteran in Hiller, in spite of Hiller's problems. I mean, Anderson wasn't a factor because he was injured. I have not heard an update on his injury situation, so I don't think he was a factor. It was between the veteran Hiller and the kid. And honestly, if it was me or most NHL coaches, I think they probably would have gone with the veteran. But he went with the kid, and the kid stood, and he didn't stand on his head. He looked composed. He played great. They got a 2-0 lead, and he was a brick wall. And now I think they're going to go with Gibson the rest of the way, and it's very possible that they could win this series now. But I think we have a little more to hear from LA before the series is out.
Josh, this is why I don't think this is a tough decision. And like Mike is saying there, he's got different possibilities here in goal, and maybe many coaches would have gone back to Hiller. But this is Boudreau, who has gone through horrible goaltending in his life in the playoffs. I mean, this is a guy who lived through Washington, and could never get a playoff goalie there, and that's what kept them probably from winning a Stanley Cup. So to me, when he sees a guy like John Gibson's available to go with, I'm not surprised at all, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, you're entitled to your opinion, I guess, right?
Yeah.
But how about?
Thanks for joining us. We appreciate you coming by today.
We're having some bad reception in Toronto. Cut.
Where can people find you, Josh? Besides HockeyBuzz, because you might be somewhere else. Go ahead, continue.
And I want to ask you though about Jonathan Quick. What do you think about him getting yanked after the first period?
Well, anybody.
I mean, I was a little surprised. I mean, he let in 2 goals, and you pull him.
It's definitely one of those situations of the team just needed to be woken up. It was one of those things, and I think it was a good coaching move in a way, because you're up 2-1. You have you have a stranglehold on home ice at that point. You might as well turn your team around, Julie. I know as a former University of Massachusetts Minuteman, you couldn't have been happy about this, but
well, actually, I didn't mind it, because I completely agree in the fact that the Kings weren't playing in front of him. Why are you going to let one of the best goalies in the league out to dry because your team isn't doing its part? And not that I ever want to see Jonathan Quick pulled, but in that situation, it definitely was a wake-up call, and just saying, hey, look, you know what? He doesn't deserve what you're dishing out to him. And you're putting him and making him make these impossible saves because you're not doing your part. So if you're going to do that to him, then he's done. And we're going to put Jones in, because it's not fair to him.
Right.
And that's more what I think happened in regards to, I don't think it was a reflection on Jonathan Quick. I think it was a reflection on how poorly the team was playing in front of him, and just a wake-up call to the team to say, you need to be better. And when you're ready to play better, you can have the privilege of having Jonathan Quick backing you up between the pipes.
Yeah, I think that, and I also think you also keep a little bit of the mystique going. You don't want to kill Jonathan Quick's mystique right now. He's got a good thing going, so you pull him after 2 goals. It's the same kind of thing you're saying, Julie, just from a slightly different angle. But yeah, I completely agree that it was a good move. Sutter, who I like as a coach a lot, he's actually one of my favorite coaches out there. Makes good moves like this, and in the playoffs he knows what he's doing. So we'll see what happens tonight. Obviously, what are you expecting tonight, Mike? I mean, we don't know now. We're really in new territory.
Yeah, I mean, it's a completely backward series where LA wins the first 2 games in Anaheim. Anaheim wins the next 2 games in LA. I mean, I know that the last time that happened in the playoffs was the Boston-Montreal series from about 3 years ago, and then Boston won Game 5. Not that that has anything to do with what's going to happen tonight. I mean, I think Anaheim has the emotional and the emotion and the momentum going in their direction, but that can end on 1 or 2 bad goals. So I mean, it's all going to be, the weight's going to be back, the pressure is going to be back on Anaheim in a sense. Now they sort of have to hold serve at home. And I mean, I think it's going to be a tight game tonight. I think Quick will be a lot better than allowing 2 goals on 11 shots, and I don't think he was at fault for the game. And LA did respond after he was pulled and played well in the second period and did get some shots on Gibson, but they just couldn't beat the kid. So I think it'll be a close game, but I would give Anaheim a slight advantage just because of home ice, but home ice hasn't meant anything so far, so we'll see.
If anything, I'd give LA an advantage because of that reason. The Kings, Josh, have been better on the road in playoffs in the past, and we saw it against New Jersey. By the way, just for those of you keeping track at home, because I know I got a lot of texts and tweets that people wanted me to play these games through. So Kopitar's just scored, by the way, to take a 1-0 lead in here. But
whoa! You just changed teams.
I know. So I didn't want to interrupt you guys before, but Montreal won 4-1. They took that game 4-1 relatively easily, surprisingly so. So maybe we'll see a Montreal victory tonight.
So that was my trend.
Yes.
We're all about trends. I tweeted about this earlier. We're all about trends and what's the other word? Whatever. It's in my tweet.
Watermelons?
No.
Tendencies?
But it went Boston, Montreal, Montreal, Boston,
Right.
Boston, Montreal,
Boston.
Montreal, question
Okay,
mark.
there you go.
Question
Okay,
mark.
so
Oh, patterns. That's it. Trends and patterns.
sequences. So you got like
Tendencies.
newspapers cut up on your wall at home, Julie. You're just typing these things, putting these things together, and finding. I agree with you. This is a sequence, and
What is this,
yes.
a beautiful mind?
yes, beautiful. Montreal. So yeah, I mean that we'll get to that in a second. But this game going on now. So Montreal won the first game 4-1. No problem. We'll talk about that game next. This game's now starting, and it's now actually tied at 1-1 as we speak. So there we go. I think, but getting back, Josh.
So more importantly, who's in net for the Ducks in your little simulation?
Gibson. I put him in. I called him up.
All right.
Gibson in
Go
there. I
Gibson.
did everything. I'm legit. I don't. Seidenberg didn't play in the Bruins game, so I got Gibson in there now. So far, that was Silverberg scoring on quick right there to make it 1-1.
Nice overhead shot there.
Yes, very early in the game.
EA Sports doesn't mess around.
They don't. This is really pretty amazing. Josh.
Yes.
Now the Kings, in my opinion, the way the style they play is much easier for them to play away from their building.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I will agree with you.
Thanks.
For once.
Yeah, right.
3 up a
Finally.
softball. That was just a lob. Gosh, come in. Keep going.
I'm interested to see what happens next game, or tonight, I should say. What happens in that game if Anaheim, plays the style that they played last game? I think it's very possible we could see the end of the Kings.
Josh wants to get back in your good graces by agreeing with you, Act.
Yes, right now. I want to be invited back tomorrow.
No, I like people who don't agree with me. I have 150,000 Twitter followers, and about 145,000 of them don't agree with me.
Nice.
I'm used to that. And maybe even more.
Yeah, when I agreed with you the other day, I heard from the people that don't agree with you.
Yes, I appreciate that. Yeah, you do. Julie knows those people well. Julie and I we've been doing this for a while.
I'm familiar with those.
Yes, Julie and I have some great stories from way back when we were just starting this whole thing out with bloggers and everything. Fun times.
I only blocked 15 people the other day, but anyway.
Oh my God. Well, that's what at Eklund is. It's a blocking service. You put it out there, and you immediately know who to block. Like, these are idiots who are following you that you just were letting follow you. Now you know they're
You're
idiots.
throwing out more blocks than an NFL offensive line. There you go.
Oh my goodness. All right, let's get to Montreal, Boston while we're at it, okay? Because I've got some definite opinions, and I've made myself known about this. I think Michel Therrien is the worst coach in hockey. And this is why. It's not just Danny Briere, which I think is absolutely absurd. And, I'll go on my Briere rant really quickly because I've done it before, but now making the guy dress for warm-ups, and then even though he knows he's going to be scratched before the last game, so he can run the line through, I mean, when I tell you something, and I'll tell you this without any hesitation, I won't say who, but I know people in that locker room, players that are very important to the Montreal Canadiens that aren't named Danny Briere, who they need to sign if they want to stay a competitive team, who are absolutely pissed at this. Like, this is not, Therrien, it might not matter what Therrien does to Danny Briere, but it does matter what Therrien does to other certain initialed players, and that are, very important to this team. And when you treat a veteran guy like that, who's very popular in your room, and make him, scratching him is one thing. You're only playing him 6 or 8 minutes a game. Obviously, you don't think he's good enough to play or whatever. We can all debate that at this point. But actually making him dress so he can help run the line things in warm-ups, because, he's one of those guys that people listen to. He's a leader on the team. And then, my goodness, when I got the word of that, I was out with my wife for our anniversary on Friday night, and I was just so ticked. And I basically, texted people I knew, and the way I was feeling was not alone. Michel Therrien's done this before. When he went with Pittsburgh to the Stanley Cup Finals, he alienated Gonchar at the time. He alienated Orpik at the time. He's done the same kind of thing. It's his way of creating like this I think it's his way of creating. It's either I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say he's trying to create some kind of unbalance in the locker room that helps the team. But to be honest, I think he's just he's in a selfish game right now that's really hurt the chances of the Montreal Canadiens in winning this series. Mike, thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, everybody knows that Michel Therrien has a limited shelf life. I don't know whether that shelf life ends after this, playoffs if they lose to Boston in 6 or 7 games. They have PK Subban as a restricted free agent. He's going to expect to be the highest paid defenseman in the NHL. We know that
keep him happy then. That's all I'm going to say.
Right. I'm saying we know that him and Therrien have had their problems throughout the year. So I mean that might be one mark in the negative column for him. But I mean in general in Montreal he's considered a good coach. And in spite of
no, I disagree.
Another disagreement.
I disagree. Mike, you're fired. No, I don't think he's considered a good coach. By who? I mean, I've just talking to people that I've talked to, players in and around that organization. There's a lot of people that have been around the organization for a long time that are not happy with him as a coach. And they think that what they're doing right now is purely a matter of the fact that they have, they have some really good defense. They're being led by PK and Carey Price are amazing players, and they've got something over Boston, and they came up against a Tampa team that was really weak.
Right.
But this is all, I mean, sorry to interrupt you, Mike, but that's...
No, it's okay. Well, let's just say it would be a surprise if they, after getting to the second round of the playoffs, if they decided to fire Michel Therrien. I mean, maybe not. Maybe we'll see. We'll hear more. I mean, I agree with you that, doing what he's done with a veteran player who's a clutch playoff performer like Briere is stupid. They put in Brandon Prust in Game 5. He's not at 100%. He's not a guy who can play physically anymore. And if you compare one and the other, it's not a contest. Now apparently tonight they're probably gonna put Briere back in the lineup, but he's essentially gonna play fourth line duty and play the power play, which they need to work for them to advance to Game 7. But Carey Price has to stand on his head. PK Subban has to be the best player on the ice for this team to advance. Yeah. I think the game is going to go to Montreal. I think the series is going to go to 7 games. I think Boston's going to win. But granted, I think he could have done some other maneuvers a little better. But we'll see.
They had this series. That's the problem with Montreal. In Montreal, everything's analyzed. People know this. The Danny Briere thing's not just a secret. I mean, when you talk about points, you talk about what he even did in this series. They had this series and they let it go because of 2 really horribly coached games. Josh, that's my opinion. Do you want to disagree with me?
No. As soon as you say "let it go," I now have the Frozen theme again in my head from my daughters watching it over and over again. Yes, it won't go away. Honestly, now I've totally forgot what I was going to say.
Julie, perhaps you would like to do this answer in some form of song. Continue.
No, I don't sing. Remember, I'm a dancer.
That's right. You are a dancer. A classically trained dancer.
Unless you want me to Vogue.
Absolutely, anytime. Beautifully done. That's Julie Robenheimer, ladies and gentlemen. Follow her at Julie Robenheimer or on HockeyBuzz. So Jules, your thoughts on this series, and then we'll get back to Josh, and he composes himself after that voguing session. Go ahead, continue, Jules.
Well, there are... I don't know. Well, see, now Mike's getting into it. Mike, I think you're voguing.
I know, I've thrown you. Sorry.
Needs some work. But the thing here is I'm very impressed by the restraint that the 3 of you have shown, simply because I all thought that this round was going to end tonight.
I know.
The entire round.
Yep, I remember. I was going to talk about it, but that was just a bold prediction, and it made sense. But continue.
It did. It made total sense.
It did.
But then all these teams started playing that weren't playing, and it was kind of like they all switched, and they're like, oh my gosh, we need to get this sorted out. And we've seen that in every series.
Yep.
And so now my thought is we're guaranteed games through Wednesday. Mm-hmm. My thought is do we want to go to Friday? Because my whole theory behind my it ends this weekend, or this week, today, is that the LA Anaheim series goes to Friday. So there is a chance that if the Wild and Chicago don't go 7, we're going to have a day without hockey. And that is a sad, sad day, only because it helps to reinforce the fact that the season, in fact, will come to an end.
I know, it's horrible.
And that will be a sad day. This is the last round in which we will really have a game every day.
We could do a story on Donald Sterling that day. But anyway.
No, we can't.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, God, the kids will have to go outside and start playing games, and we'll have to think about that.
Right, like it's a sad realization, and I don't want that to happen.
I know.
So now I would like this entire round to end on Wednesday, and then we can have, depending on who plays, we might have round 3 start Thursday, but if not, Friday for sure. So for that's what I'm thankful for, that you guys just didn't rub it in my face.
Nope.
We don't do that.
But what I'm loving is just the inspired hockey across the board.
Oh,
I feel everybody is sensing the end is near, but I also feel that along with that, they're sensing just how close they are, and these teams are all really, really close, and it's producing some really, really good hockey games.
What we're seeing is the old principle of the playoffs, that whoever needs to win usually wins, and that's what we're seeing back and forth right now. And that's what happens with parity, with close teams. So this is 2-2 after 2, by the way. This is a little highlight reel from the game. So we're going to continue on to the third period now. Anaheim, LA.
Talk to the mic, Nick. There we go.
Anaheim, LA, 2-2 after 2. So here, this is the beginning of the third. Josh.
On Friday, when you had the Rangers-Penguins going, didn't you have the Rangers winning?
I did.
When they played?
I did.
Yeah.
They not only won, they came from behind from a 3-1 deficit, like the Penguins always give up. And Rick Nash scored, so that reels out the window there. But yep.
Okay. Yeah. Now we know it's a fraud.
Nash will be the biggest player available when the summer begins.
Biggest in terms of size, or I don't think there's much of a market for Rick Nash right now. I honestly don't.
There is not a market for Rick Nash. Who wants a player that doesn't show up when it matters most?
Yeah.
He's a good regular season player.
Who cares?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Honestly.
The San Jose Sharks.
If you can't get it done in the postseason, why are you on my team?
Yeah. It's just how can a guy that big with that much strength and that much speed and that much scoring ability play with that little emotion?
They aren't even using him on the power play anymore.
Why would you?
Because he does not go to the front of the net. If you notice, he is not going to the net anymore. Yeah, I've heard it said many times that he is not a power forward anymore simply because he does not want to take the physical going after having a couple concussions. And if you watch his game, he's on the periphery all the time. He's on the outside. He's trying to beat people with his speed, and he's not a speedy player. Yeah. So, I mean, I think he's going to get to the point where he's like a Dave Andreychuk, where he's just a big lumbering guy. And Dave Andreychuk dined out at the end of his career, standing in front of nets, taking abuse, screening goaltenders, and tipping in shots. Right, exactly. Unless Rick Nash incorporates that back in his game, then he's the most overpaid player in the NHL. And I keep going back to the compliance buyout thing with him and Brad Richards. Brad Richards is leading that team in scoring right now in the playoffs. Rick Nash, 5 or 6 points.
Yeah. Yeah, and taking like 550 shots without scoring. So yeah, that's a little exaggerated, but something like that. So before we go, let's briefly get our UFA to B discussions going. But this is actually not a UFA to B discussion. This is a trade rumor discussion, and I swear people were watching our show last week, Josh, because right after our show, suddenly the talk about Spezza and Phaneuf just elevated everywhere.
Yes, but I can't take credit for this one. Mike's actually the first one that said it on our show. I haven't heard it anywhere else that Dion Phaneuf could possibly be on the move.
Yeah, and Mike brought that up, and Kevin agreed with him, and I still disagree with this is my point on this. I don't think Dion Phaneuf is nearly as movable. And I talked to several people over the weekend because I wanted to get an idea of this. Because, of course, the second rumor like this pops up, I get inundated with questions. What's going on with Phaneuf and Spezza? And I said, nothing. This is the same thing that's been going on for weeks, for months. They've been trying to move. They could have moved at any point. Phaneuf, they've tried before. It's nothing new. I mean, a player like that, who is not great defensively, who gives up a lot of chances. I mean, you can disagree with me, but he's not. I mean, as good as he is physically, he also is very good at some really boneheaded plays, Mike.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, he is not the perfect defenseman by a long shot. He is not a top 5 NHL defenseman. He's probably in the top 20. He is being overpaid, but everyone is going to be overpaid now, especially, and the circumstances have changed. He was shopped at the NHL draft last year. There were a lot of rumors about him in Carolina. That never panned out. Dave Nonis, the GM of the Leafs, admitted that he had been having conversations with teams at the trade deadline regarding him, and this was after the $7 million a year for 7-year contract had been negotiated. There is a market for Dion Phaneuf. I mean, and because if he was out there in free agency right now, he would get the deal that he was signed by the Maple Leafs for. Because right now, Matt Niskanen is the best defensive free agent out there. He will probably get more than Andrew McDonald got, which is over $5 million a year. And God bless him. If he gets it, he deserves it. He had a fine year with the Penguins. Andrew McDonald had a really good year with the Islanders and finished it up with the Flyers. I don't begrudge any player getting as much money as they possibly can. The thing is, in terms of other players making certain amounts of money, whether that player is worth that. I don't think Andrew McDonald is worth $5 million a year. I don't think Matt Niskanen is going to be worth $5 million a year. I don't think Dion Phaneuf is worth $7 million when you consider that Shea Weber and Ryan Suter are making close to $8 million, and PK Subban is going to ask for $9 million and probably settle for around $8 to $8.5 million with Montreal. That being said, if you look at the rumor that Nick Kyprios from Sportsnet talked about on Sunday, and you limit it to just the Western Conference, there are 6 teams that could very well be interested in Phaneuf, who would be an upgrade to them. Dallas, Edmonton, Calgary, Colorado, Vancouver. And I'm forgetting one of them, but all of them have the cap room, have prospects that they could trade. And the $7 million factor is not that much of a factor. And when you flip it over with Jason Spezza, he's got 1 year left, around over $7 million a year, and he's had serious back injuries. Dion Phaneuf has been relatively healthy his entire career. I think Phaneuf, based on the market and every other factor, will be a much more tradable commodity and draw a lot more interest than Jason Spezza will.
All right, well, we're gonna go ahead, Mike. Go ahead, Josh. But before you go on, I'm just gonna say we're gonna make a bet right here, Mike. Okay.
Okay.
On this plate, Julie, you're a witness.
You owe me 2 cookies already, so I'll bet you the same 2 cookies.
Cookies I can do. I will make this a steak dinner when I see you. That Jason Spezza gets moved not only before Dion Phaneuf, but for more. And I honestly think they get more in return for him. And the reason I say this is not just his play on the ice. Yeah, he's a physical player. Yeah, he's a tough player. And yeah, Jeff Carter scored up there. It's 3-2 LA for multitasking of you and Beck. But he also is absolutely a locker room problem. And I honestly think that teams know this and teams are worried. And there's a reason that Calgary, think about Calgary for a second. Obviously, he had a great career in Calgary. He was quite the player in Calgary. The person who traded for him to come back to Toronto is now in Calgary, in Brian Burke. Mm-hmm. Why isn't Calgary involved in this? They're not. I checked up and down. The only team I could find out west that had any discussions since the end of the season about Phaneuf was Winnipeg. That was the only team I could find. When Winnipeg's got some players. Josh, go on.
Well, I was going to say I could see something happening where we see a Ryan Kessler involved in a deal for Dion Phaneuf. I mean, I know the Leafs are interested in him. David Nonis had him, obviously, when he was in Vancouver. Might something like that happen? I would think maybe something else would have to go with Kessler for Phaneuf. But I could definitely see something like that happening.
And Edmonton as well. I mean, with their defense, and their situation at forward. with Gagne, with Yakupov, with the young kids that they have. And right now, their only solid veteran defenseman is Andrew Ference, and Phaneuf is from Edmonton, bringing the hometown kid back. I think that's a possibility too. I mean, I will grant you, and I'll take the bet. I will grant you your points. And Phaneuf, if he is traded, will be traded before July 1st, because on July 1st, the limited no trade clause in his contract kicks in.
Yes.
They can trade him anywhere, including Winnipeg. And that would be a Jeff Carter-like treatment of Dion Phaneuf, because Carter was traded to the wasteland of Columbus, and he didn't like it very much and forced his way to go to L.A. But if Phaneuf was traded to Winnipeg, I don't think that deal would happen, simply because I don't think Dion Phaneuf would want to go to the Winnipeg Jets, and that's a sad thing. But I think he would go to San Jose, he would go to Edmonton, he would go to a number of the teams I just mentioned. Winnipeg might be a non-starter for Dion Phaneuf.
It's a one-year thing, I don't know. Sure. Julie, you're going to be the one who's going to judge this at the end of the day, okay?
Okay.
Which trade is better? It's going to be fun. I mean,
I would do that, because that's my favorite thing.
I know. You're excellent at judging people.
That's not very nice, Zach.
I'm not trying to judge you when I say that. I'm just saying that I think you're very good at things like this.
I'm very good at evaluating value.
Right. Yeah, it's true. It's very true. If you want to get like a sofa or something like that, Julie's the person to take with you, because she will find you the best sofa for the best price out there.
I need Julie as my wardrobe consultant.
Too expensive for you,
shoes. I bought a pair of shoes yesterday for $15.
See, that's the thing. There you go.
Spectacular.
Sounds good to me.
You should be doing a show, Julie. You should have your own show, your own podcast on that kind of stuff.
Well, it takes a lot of hard work to cultivate a wardrobe of value. Good stuff, good prices. It's just like building a hockey team, but slightly different.
Yes, except it's hard to get a mobile defenseman. It's hard to get a pair of
nude pumps.
Right, there you go. That's the equivalent to mobile defenseman. Perfect.
I got a pair of those. No, just kidding.
Yeah, I'm not a pump person myself. All right, so that's all the time we have for today, guys. I really appreciate it. We don't have anything else to talk about. I think we're good. Enjoy the games tonight. This is the good night. Well, I guess they're all good now, but this is a really good one tonight. We've got Montreal-Boston back there, by the way. It's over now, but you can. It is okay. The game.
Are we on Game 7 already?
The Kings have won 5-2 over the Ducks.
So it predicted Montreal and LA, so we'll see how accurate EA Sports is.
Both games not close. Montreal 4-1, LA 5-2. It's going to be a good one. It's going to be a good one. I can't wait. You know what we did, which is really cool? I'll tell you guys about this real quick before we go. We set up a big someone sent me this camping movie screen that they had. It's like 144 inches in diagonal that you can set up at a campground. And it looks just like putting a tent together. It's really cool. We set it up on the yard last night. And we watched Cosmos Outside, the show Cosmos, and I had my telescope out there, and it was amazing. So it was like we're actually going and looking at stuff in the sky while we watch Cosmos. And tonight we're watching both hockey games outside, so it's really, really fun. Really
That'll be fun.
Yeah, it's a fun night to do that. All right, guys, talk to you soon. Enjoy the games. Remember, without the buzz,
it's just hockey.
See you soon.